Okay, our topic today is getting started in digital contesting. Steve Ford, WB8IMY, joined ARRL headquarters in 1991 as a book editor. Over the next few years, he was promoted to QST managing editor and finally QST editor-in-chief and ARRL publications manager. He has written several ARRL books and authors a monthly QST column known as Eclectic Technology. Prior to joining the ARRL, Steve worked in broadcast journalism. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in English degree from Wright State University and an associate degree in electronic engineering from ITT Technical Institute. Born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, Steve was first licensed in 1971. He held his amateur extra ticket for the past 20 years. Steve's main amateur radio interests include digital operating, software-defined radio, DXing, and contesting. Steve lives in Central Connecticut with his wife and teenage daughter. Steve, glad you could join us today. Go ahead. The presentation is yours.
Okay, Ken. Thank you very much. And thank you also to everybody who who could take the time out of a leisurely Sunday afternoon or evening or morning, I suppose, depending on where you are. This, as the title slide indicates here, is a discussion about getting started in digital contesting. Now, I would tend to imagine that many of you are already well acquainted with contesting generally, but this is let's call it a niche, a small section of the contesting community, but one that I happen to enjoy. Naturally, and by the way, forgive me if I'm talking down to some of the veterans out there. You can just relax and snooze here for a moment. But why contest at all? Well, probably you wouldn't be here listening if you didn't enjoy doing it. But it's a question, strangely enough, that my wife sometimes puts to me, especially when I've been at the radio too long. And she will ask, "Well, why do you do this? What is the point of it after all?" Well, for me at least, I enjoy the pleasure of the challenge. As the slide says, it's me against the world, or most often just me against myself, to see if I can get a better score than I did the last time around, to see if I can endure sitting in this chair and operating the radio for hours and hours and hours on end. Also, to sharpen your operating skills, which is something that personally I've noticed over the years, at least as it comes to digital contesting. It's phenomenal how, as long as you do something over and over, like speaking a language or sending and receiving CW, anything like that, sufficient amount of practice, you sharpen your skills. And to better understand your station, of course. To know the ups and the downs, things that tend to go wrong, which is what usually tends to happen. I have a lucky streak. Other than the occasional software glitch, I haven't had anything explode on me yet during a contest, although that is yet to come, no doubt. To understand the vagaries of propagation, well, of course, knowing which bands to be on at which time of the day, what to expect on a given band in the way of what DX or distance operating you might expect. And also, frankly, if you like to chase paper, as they say, to contact states, grids, counties, DXEC entities, whatever, for various awards, that's something that I particularly enjoy. I mean, even a relatively small contest, I come out of it usually with at least one or two DXEC entities that are new to me in my log at least, or new on a given band, so that's always nice. Basically, contesting itself is, and this may not come as news to many of you, but it's growing. HF contesting in particular. Working at league headquarters and working just down the hall from Sean Kutzko, the contest manager, I'm privy to some of the records that Sean keeps. And in particular, it was phenomenal to me with the rather poor HF propagation that we had, at least until very recently, that despite that, we saw a substantial increase in contesting. As it notes here, the 2008 and 2009 sweepstakes, both phone and CW, saw a record number of log submissions. The recent 2011 10-meter contest broke historic records with more than 5,000 logs submitted. And the 2010 and 2011 RTTY Roundup both set records. I don't know about 2012 yet. I haven't bugged Sean about that, but I'll be curious to see where that comes out. So anyway, among all the ways to contest, phone, CW, why digital? Well, I can speak easily to that, somewhat from a personal perspective. I mean, it's relatively easy on the body. You don't wear your voice out, well, unless you're shouting to somebody in the room, but you you don't end up with tired fingers or a tired wrist from sending CW over and over. You get to, and this is particularly intriguing, by the way, you get to explore the pleasure of integrating your station computer and your radio. Now, by that I mean making the computer and the radio work together through an interface with various kinds of software. That in itself is a challenge, and if you're at all into computers or into software, there's something to be said for that. Actually, there's a lot to be said for that. You don't need a big station to make a difference. Now, CW operators, CW contesters already know this to be true. If you have a modest station, in other words, you're not running a kilowatt and you're not running a Yagi at 100 feet, you need to make the most of what you have, which just may be a dipole, a vertical, or what have you. In that case, it helps to be able to use a mode that is particularly efficient, and by that I mean spectrally efficient, or to put it in a crude sort of way, that concentrates the energy or a fair amount of energy into a relatively narrow slice of spectrum, which CW does, and which digital does as well. So it gives you a bit of a competitive edge to run digital as opposed to phone, which is nearly 3 kilohertz wide. Finally, it's quiet. And what do I mean by that? Well, I have a family. I live in a very small house, and it helps me a great deal to contest in such a way that I can keep a very low profile with my wife and with my daughter. In other words, well, to give you an idea, the times that I operate phone sweepstakes, it drives them crazy to hear me shouting, or what sounds like shouting to them, over and over and over and over. With digital contesting, they don't hear a peep out of me except for my radio. I do like to be able to hear the signals, but beyond that, I can keep that at a relatively low volume. They just hear me tapping on the keys, and that's it. Any time of the day or night, I can operate till 3 in the morning, and they don't even realize what I'm up to. So that's a definite benefit if you are not the only person in your house. So what kind of digital modes are most prevalent in the contest community? Well, RTTY is the king of digital contesting still, despite all of the digital modes that are out there, and I've kind of lost count. I think we're up to about 30 some odd presently. But RTTY, old as it is still the most popular mode for not only digital contesting, but DXing for that matter. It's reasonably fast. It's as fast as most of us can type. I mean, in contrast, and I did this the other night, operating PSK 63, which is a, well, I would call it PSK 31 on steroids. It's a lot faster than I can type, which is a little bit embarrassing when I made a contact the other night, because on the other guy's end there must have been long pauses while I was trying to fill up the buffer and catch up in my typing. In contrast, RTTY, if you're a reasonably moderate to fast typist, you'll be just fine with that. Also, RTTY avoids what, for lack of a better word, I call the capture effect, that if any of you have operated PSK 31, you've no doubt seen, and that is the demodulator in the PSK 31 software tends to capture and lock onto whatever is the strongest signal at the point on the waterfall display that you've happened to click. And you usually see and decode that signal and nothing else. RTTY, though, depending on the relative signal strengths, if two stations are calling me at once, I can get bits and pieces of their call signs. And in fact, when I've been searching and pouncing with other stations, I can tell that that's exactly what's going on their end, because they'll work somebody else, finish with that person quickly, and then suddenly you'll see typed on your screen, now WB and IMY. In other words, he knew I was there. He grabbed enough of my call sign. I was still standing by, so he could work that person and then turn around and grab me, which is a nice advantage. So, what are the contest modes? Well, I talked about PSK 31. Yes, there are PSK 31 contests. Not many, but there are a few. There are some Hellschreiber. If you're familiar with that mode, it's a little bit like facsimile, or HF fax, if you want to call it that. And there are a couple of Hellschreiber sprints, little contests that normally span about 4 to 6 hours, and sometimes you'll see those on the weekends. But despite all of that, and as the slide says, nothing has gotten even close to the popularity of RTTY contesting. Now there are 14, as you'll see here, major RTTY contests each year. The ones that you see in red are the ones that generally get the highest level of participation. Next weekend, there is one coming up. If you haven't tried RTTY contesting yet, and I hope you will after viewing this webinar, you'll have your first opportunity to get your feet wet next weekend with the EA RTTY contest. And that's a fun contest. Not a huge amount of participation, but enjoyable nonetheless. Now, RTTY and the casual contester. Well, as I alluded to earlier, I am a casual contester. I mean, you're looking right now at a picture of my station. That's it. There's kind of a stereotype of people who work at ARRL headquarters that we all have massive stations at home, and that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, there are a few of us on the staff who have no stations at all. They live in apartments or condos, and they come over to headquarters and they use W1AW or the internal station W1HQ to do their operating. My station, again, very, very modest. You can see there a Kenwood TS2000 transceiver. My computer's out of view there to the right. You can see my LCD monitor, and that's it. On the outside, I have a 43-foot vertical antenna with a fair number of radials on the grass, and that's all my station is. I run 100 watts. I don't have an amplifier, and if my wife has anything to say about it, I may never have one, and, well, also she would tend to veto a tower that I would hope would be in my future, but one never knows. I'm still working on that. Digital contesting is excellent for modest stations because you can, as I mentioned before, you can accomplish a great deal with relatively little power. Remember again that you're concentrating your RF energy into a much narrower slice of spectrum, so you can get away with having a modest 100-watt station and a modest antenna like my omnidirectional vertical antenna and still do a pretty fair job of it. Will I ever win a contest? No, very unlikely. Will I ever get into the top 10? Nah, probably not. Now my wife will ask me, well then what's the point? Well, the point is it's enjoyable, as we covered a few slides back. I frankly don't care if I win or not. If I do, that's terrific. But as a casual contester, it's all about the fun, nothing else. Now let me see if I can get, there's my next slide. Okay, so you don't have a digital station? Well, I'll assume that many of you don't. But really, the basics are pretty simple. All you need is a HF sideband transceiver, which I assume that many of you have, a computer with a sound card or a sound chipset, a sound card interface, which we'll get to in a moment. And by the way, many of those interfaces these days already have the sound built into them, or the sound chipsets themselves. You need software of some kind, and refreshments do help, of course. Now, okay, sound card interfaces. As I say here, they can be simple, they can be complex. I homebrewed my own You can go out and buy them on the shelf if you like. You can tell this slide, incidentally, is a little bit dated. Note that it shows up here a serial port. Not too many computers have serial ports these days. Many of the off-the-shelf interfaces have USB connectors, or you can use a USB to serial adapter. But this is the basic outline. Now, if you want to do what I did, if you like to homebrew, you can do it this way. A basic transistor, it's a switch, obviously. You're picking up the voltage here, in this case, off the serial port or your serial to USB converter, using that to key the transistor, which brings this push-to-talk line to ground, keys your transmitter. At the same time, you've got audio going from the computer or the interface into the radio, and that's what's sending your RTTY. I have a little bit more elaborate homebrew interface because when I'm operating RTTY, I like to send FSK or pure frequency shift keying. I won't get into that here in this webinar, but it's just a personal preference, and so my interface is a little bit more elaborate, but not too bad. Now, talking about the off-the-shelf interfaces, obviously the main contenders you see here, you've got the Rig Blasters, the SignalLink USB, the microham units. Many of these, as I said earlier, do have the sound devices built in. The new Rig Blaster Advantage has the sound device built in, as does the SignalLink USB and also the microhams and a few others. Now, digital contest software, for me, is one of the most critical aspects of the station, because in this instance, you've got a single piece of software that will score for you automatically. It will do the critical duplicate checking, because you don't want to work the station more than once within the rules on a given band. It'll track your multipliers. If you're really competitive and you want to see how many of those multipliers you're getting, it'll do that. And, of course, it will handle the log submissions when the contest is over in the Cabrillo file format. Now, I'm not going to, I don't want to sound like I'm hawking one particular piece of software over another here. I'm showing you what my personal preferences are. At home here at my station, I run WriteLog, which is available for $30 when I last checked, and you can see the URL there, writelog.com. The reason I use WriteLog and have for many years is because it has the RTTY functionality built into it. It has a program, a sub-program, or routine, if you will, called RidiWrite that's built into it. So everything is within the umbrella of one single program. It's a convenience feature that I enjoy. Of course, also there's N1MM Logger, and it does not have RIDI functionality built into it, but of course, as many of you probably know, if you have the free MMTTY software, which is an excellent RIDI program, by the way, there is a way to incorporate that within N1MM so that they will pass information back and forth. Now, when it comes to contest tips and tricks, and I'm not a guru per se, but I've learned a few things over the years. Obviously, read the rules before the contest starts, of course. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people don't. I don't care what sort of contesting you're doing, whether it's phone or CW. A remarkable number of people don't read the rules. Do you want to be single-op, multi-single, multi-multi? I generally, obviously, operate single-op. There are some interesting variations on this, such as single operator to radio and so on and so forth. If you want a real blast, frankly, multi-multi for the contests that allow that, for me, is wonderful. I did multi-multi once on a RIDI contest from W1AW, and that was just a hoot. We were in different studios and shouting back and forth and ringing bells when we worked different multipliers. It was an excellent weekend. Now, know the exchange. Obviously, that's part of the rules. In other words, a contest will vary. It might be, as I point out here, a matter of sending a signal report, a serial number, which usually begins with 001. It could be something like a signal report and a state, serial number and age. Yes, there are a few of those. And by the way, that makes for some interesting viewing when you go back over your log and see which hams are in which age groups. Most of the U.S. amateurs in those contests I've noticed are age 60 plus. What's interesting is that amateurs in Europe tend to be much younger, and by that I mean 20s and 30s. It could be a signal report in an IARU zone, what have you. Now, if you notice that bullet there at the bottom where it says many contest programs already know the necessary exchanges, in my experience with WriteLog, this is one of its most beneficial features, is the fact that you can set it up so that it already knows the rules for a given contest. And when you see the screen, certain parts of it are not filled in, but the fields are there. So you know exactly what you have to put in, whether it's age, serial number, or what have you. And it won't let you violate the rules that way, which you'll see in a moment. Now, here's an interesting example with WriteLog. Now, this is the OKDX contest. This contest is held in mid-December. And I grabbed a screenshot. This was taken during the contest itself. And WriteLog, I want to call your attention right up here at the top, if you can see my mouse, KK5OQ. Now, I already worked him, so WriteLog highlighted him in red or pink. So that's a warning. In other words, you've already worked this guy, don't work him again, all right? But what's intriguing is what's going on below, because I kept monitoring, and you can actually see him go through an entire exchange. Just look down here, follow my mouse if you can. Now, he just finished up with DJ3NG, okay? TU, thank you, 73, KK5OQ, QRZ test, okay? He's looking for another contact. Here he's answered by SP5 Zulu Charlie Charlie, okay? He sends DE and his call sign twice. Frankly, and I know this is a little bit controversial, the guys on the RTTY Reflector like to argue about this, but I send my call sign 3 times. Why? Well, because of my modest station, sometimes I know I'm probably not heard that well depending on propagation, so I will usually go for 3. At any rate, SP5 Zulu Charlie Charlie answers. He sends his signal report, and IARU 04. He's in other words, he's in IARU zone 4, because the OKDX contest, that's the exchange. It's a signal report and your IARU zone. So KK5OQ sends that as his response, and he sends SP5 Zulu Charlie Charlie, sends his response, and done. And we're on to the next one. And this can be pretty rapid fire. I mean, depending on conditions, you would be astonished. Now, running versus searching and pouncing. Well, it depends on your blood pressure and your ability to handle stress, I suppose. Myself, I prefer to search and pounce because, once again, I have a modest station and a modest signal. I like to tune through the band. I start at the bottom and I work my way up. And each station that's calling CQ or just finishing up with somebody else, I'll jump in and throw my call and hopefully work it. Sometimes I will try to run, which for some of you who are new to contesting, you stake out a frequency that's clear and you start sending CQ, and with any luck you start bagging one station after another. You do have to be skilled. You have to be on the ball to do that. I've done it before. It just depends on how relaxed I want to be, if you know what I mean. Now, macros. Everybody uses macros, and I have some examples here. These are taken from WriteLog, but macros essentially make it very, very easy to more or less format and send the canned exchanges. For example, in this case, I've set up 3 different macros, and I've done this in WriteLog, and I won't get into the details of how to do that in this particular program, but I just want to show how effective they are. When I hit the F5 key, it sends my call sign twice. Now see, it just put the lie to me. I said 3 times, but anyway, sends my call sign twice. And in the case of WriteLog, it sends %E. And what that means in WriteLog means shut down the transmitter, stop transmitting. So it sends WB8IMY, WB8IMY, and then it stops and goes back to receive. Now let's say that I've worked somebody, or not worked somebody rather, but somebody has responded to me. They've given me their report. Now it's my turn to give my report, so I hit the F4 key. Now what %D, do you see that? %D grabs their call sign from the window within WriteLog. Presumably I've typed in their call sign already. Now if I haven't done that, then it just sends nothing. But let's just say that I have typed in their call sign. It will grab their call sign. It will send their call sign. Let's say it's W1AW 599 CTCT, Connecticut, Connecticut, because that's part of this particular contest exchange, DEWB8IMYK, and then once again, %E. In other words, go back to receive. Now, because I run a modest station, I also program another key, and that's because I will be asked for repeats because my signal is not that strong, or maybe propagation's a little bit flaky. I'll program the F9 key. And in this case, if somebody says state, state, question mark, I'll hit F9. It'll key my transmitter. It'll send my state CT, 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 CT 3, 4, 5 times is usually sufficient. DEWB8IMYK, and then of course the %E, which means go back to receive. Usually those 3 macros work for me. Sometimes I'll get a little more elaborate. The downside of that, though, of course, is remembering which key is which, because sometimes you can do some embarrassing things. Now, we brought this up before, but it bears mentioning again, and that is to watch out for the dupes. And this is where the contest software comes in really handy. This example, again, is from WriteLog, but once again up here, do you see W4MWH? He's highlighted in red here. That means he's already been worked under the rules for that band, let's say. However, you also see here VE3HOL, and he's highlighted in green, which means, so to speak, he's fresh meat. In other words, he's somebody I can go after. I haven't worked him before, and I will do so. Now, what about other tips and techniques? Well, the IF filters are a must. If you have a somewhat more modern vintage radio, you may be blessed with adjustable digital signal processing in the IF, which is a wonderful thing. Even my Kenwood TS2000 has that. When the band is crowded, generally I dial the IF filter down to 500 hertz. In fact, usually for even the contests that don't get as much participation, 500 hertz is a good value. When it gets really intense, let's say on 40 meters at night during the RTTY roundup, I'll, in some instances, dial it down to 250 hertz. Now, remember that RTTY has a certain bandwidth. It has a 170 hertz shift, which is what most amateurs use. If you get much below 250 hertz, you will not be able to decode the signal. So usually 250 is as low as I'm willing to go, and in most cases that's sufficient to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And as our gentleman shows here, without any filters to separate the signals, you'll go insane and you'll give up the contest in pretty short order. Now, I have here common RTTY contest frequencies. It depends on what IARU region you happen to be in, but usually 3570 to 3600 kilohertz is the hangout on 80 meters. 7030 to 7050, it depends on the contest. Now, RTTY roundup will generally go beyond 7050. That contest appeals generally to U.S. stations, and they'll go as high as 7100. Other contests, for example, the OKDX contest, can range down to about 7030. I avoid personally going below 7030, even if I hear somebody down there, because frankly that causes QRM for the CW operators that are down there. In fact, preferably, I prefer not to go below 7035 if I can help it. On 20 meters, 7075 to 14110. Once again, if it's a very popular contest like the RTTY Roundup, I've seen them go as high as 14125 in some instances. 2175 to 2110, and then finally 28070 to 28100. One note there, in some instances, again, during the RTTY roundup, I will venture a little bit higher than that by force of habit on 10 meters, mainly because I wanted to give some of the novices and the techs the opportunity to enjoy the contest as well. Well, this is my last slide. No, I don't get royalties for this book, so I'm not earning money by advertising. But this is just if you're a beginner to HF digital operating generally, whether it's contesting or otherwise, the league just published my book here earlier this year. Also, if you're looking for software and other sources of information, and by the way, everything so far that I've been talking about software-wise has been Windows-oriented, but there's also the Coco modem, and that's an excellent RTTY program for the Mac as well. And if you'd like some general good, bread and butter, brass tacks information about RTTY contesting, you can't beat AA5AU's RTTY contesting page. He's a very prominent digital contester, and he has some excellent resources on digital operating. And Ken, I think that's my last slide, so I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much, Steve. Excellent information. So at this point, we are at the Q&A period. If you have a question for Steve, go ahead and type it in the question box and hit the send button, and we'll go ahead and pick those up and send them over to Steve. Got a couple that have come in here, so let me go ahead and get started with these. And actually, the first one comes from Ben, and it's more of a comment regarding the interface, the homebrew interface that you had, Steve, and said an alternate for the 2N2222 transistors is the 2N7000 N-channel MOSFET, and I'll go ahead and reply to all, so everyone will have that note in your webinar question pane, I believe it is, in case anyone's interested in building that interface and looking for an alternate transistor for that interface. Okay, question from Igor, and I think this is UA9CDC Igor. Recommended RTTY decoder. Can you rate them? MMTTY, WriteLog, the different hardware. I know you mentioned as far as the software program you use WriteLog, but any recommendations or favorites, Steve?
Well, it depends, Igor. The RTTY, which, as I said before, which is built into WriteLog, is a very easy program to use, but is it as good decoding RTTY under marginal conditions? Probably not. I would say if you're looking for something that gives you the maximum performance on RTTY, especially under challenging conditions, that would probably be MMTTY. The downside, however, of MMTTY is it is well, let's call it a full-featured program. It can be a little bit complex or not as user-friendly as RTTY. So there's a give and take. As far as interfaces, wow, I can't think of any that I dislike. So I tend to I enjoy the ones that have the sound already built in. Again, like the microham units, the SignalLink USB is extremely popular unit. I recently reviewed the Rig Blaster Advantage. I liked it quite a bit. I don't have a lot of experience with it. Unfortunately, when we review things for QST, we don't get to keep them. So once the review period is over, that's it. I have to turn it back in.
Too bad, huh? Okay, here's a question from Tom, Alpha Bravo 3 India Charlie. For non-contesting times, can you recommend a good software package? I use Ham Radio Deluxe. That might be a little overkill for someone who is just interested in RTTY.
Yeah, Ham Radio Deluxe is an excellent program, but it is complex, no doubt about it. Some have called it the Swiss Army knife of digital software, just because it does so many things, which is good and bad. Let's see. Simple RTTY. Again, now, this will sound like I'm contradicting myself, but if all you want is RTTY, it might be MMTTY. If you could just use the default settings for amateur radio RTTY, I think you'd be fine. MMTTY gets complicated when you go into the program and begin changing all sorts of parameters. It's free, by the way. Another free program, incidentally. This is getting back to a multi-mode digital program, but is FLDigi. That's Foxtrot Lima Digi, FLDigi. And it's multi-mode, and it's also fairly friendly. Not as complex as Ham Radio Deluxe.
Okay, good. Here we've got Steve, GW4, Bravo Kilo Golf. Kudos. He says he's reading your book, Steve, halfway through it, and said it's excellent read. So recommendation for Steve's book. Let's see, lost my spot here. Okay, Ron, W8 Victor Zulu Mike from Dayton. Is there any benefit to commercial interfaces over a homebrew, functionality or versatility?
No, in fact, I would say the commercial interfaces probably give you more versatility by far. The reason I built my own little crude FSK unit was, well, two reasons. One, because I'm cheap, and two, because I just wanted to do it for the heck of it. If I had the money in my pocket here and just wanted to do something quickly with as little grief as possible, I'm sure I would just go buy an off-the-shelf unit, most likely.
Plug and pray, as they
yes.
say. Okay, Igor, another question from him asking about the use of AGC in RTTY contesting.
Oh, good point. I know that not RTTY, but RTTY, that's in WriteLog. I believe the recommended setting is fast AGC, and I'm pretty sure that's true for MMTTY as well, but I'm not certain. So I believe fast is probably the most advantageous setting.
Okay, good. Neil, N4FN, asking about some of the band segments you had listed there, and 28070, does that not run into the PSK folks?
No, it doesn't. On 10 meters, they tend to hang out around 28120. That's been the case since the old days, if you can call it that now, what, 10 years ago, of PSK 31. No, they tend to hang up there. You will hear the JT65 folks, however, at 28076. But no, you can steer clear of the PSK 31 folks.
Okay, Ted, WA3AER. I was wondering why there's so little PSK 31 contesting. Experience with PSK 31 has been much better as a peep-squeak modest station than RTTY. Seems that the successful RTTY users run a bit more than 100 watts.
No, it's a good point. There have been there have been various efforts to try to promote more PSK 31 contesting. Back a number of years ago, there was a push on to try to promote contesting with the PSK 63 mode, the one I mentioned earlier that is very fast. Why? I would say part of it is just momentum. In other words, once something gets established like RTTY has in contesting, it just takes on a life of its own. But other than that, what I've seen is that RTTY tends to handle rapid-fire exchanges somewhat better than PSK 31. The really competitive guys, I mean, obviously, what they want to do is keep their rate up. They want to work as many stations per hour, per minute as they possibly can. PSK 31, by its nature, wouldn't lend itself well to that. PSK 63 would, but again, RTTY seems to have that momentum that keeps it in place.
Okay, here's a good question, one I'm interested in, also from Ted, WA3AER. Any advice on working RTTY split? And the reason I say that is I don't operate RTTY yet. I mean, I have in a few contests from someone's house, but I was chasing a DX station here the other week and trying to find the people he's working. And it, to me, maybe it's just because I'm not familiar with RTTY, but it was much more difficult to spot the people he was working than when I've done it on phone or CW.
Well, yeah, it definitely can be. I use RTTY for DXing, obviously, because still that's the most popular mode for digital DXpeditions. And boy, it's for me, frankly, Ken, it's been the luck of the draw. The exchanges can be so fast in RTTY that by the time, if you're listening up, for example, into the pileup, by the time you lock onto somebody, get them tuned properly, decode them enough to say, oh, okay, that's the person he's working, the exchange is over and he's gone. So I wish I could give you some solid advice beyond just, get lucky, but that's about it for me at least.
Well, and that's some of the case too, whether it's some of the other modes too, depending on the size of the pileup and stuff too. Sometimes it's just kind of luck hitting it the right place at the right time. Okay, another question from GW4BKG. Any thoughts on Wind Warbler? And I guess that's part of DX Lab.
Oh, I'm aware of it. I really haven't used it, so I'm afraid I really wouldn't have any thoughts about that, unfortunately.
Okay. All right, last call. Any other questions? If not, we will close it down. So let me just drag my heels a bit, and we'll see if anything else comes in. Yeah, Ben mentioned this too, WB2RHM. He said RTTY split is a good reason to get the LP PAN adapter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I saw, when I was looking at the chat window, I saw a question go by there, Ken, that actually is something I should have mentioned and didn't. And that, I think somebody, I don't recall who it was asking if the RightLog software would do rig control, and yes, it will. In fact, that's one of the great benefits is the fact that, it reads my frequency, the frequency of the TS2000 in this case, and as I work each station, we'll plug that in automatically. And when you go back through your log after the contest, that can make for some fascinating reading.
Yeah, not to plug any one particular logging program, but I use RightLog as well for phone and CW contesting, and have the rig control set up, and find it to be a excellent program. Okay, here from Papa Charlie 5 Alpha. Is anyone working on Skimmer for RTTY? Any chance you know of anything in the works there, Steve?
Nothing that I've seen. There is now a skimmer for PSK31. I wrote a bit about that in one of my eclectic technology columns a few issues ago. But no, I haven't seen one for RTTY yet.
Okay, very good. Are DX spots clusters active during the contest? That comes from Mark, Whiskey Hotel 7 Whiskey.
Oh, you bet. In fact, programs like RightLog and N1MM both have auxiliary windows that you can open up and see the spots scrolling by. Just be careful, depending on the rules of the contest that you're participating in. Having the spots there, being able to see them and act upon them, will put you in a different category. Ken, help me out here. Was it single operator assisted, I think?
Yeah, single operator assisted allows you pretty much access to skimmer spotting networks, that sort of thing. Unassisted is just where you're pretty much disconnected from the rest of the world except for your radio.
Yes. I mean, I prefer unassisted myself. Again, just my own personal preference. I like to find things by accident, so to speak. But on the other hand, the contests that don't penalize me for it or knock me into another category, I will admit to having done that. You bet.
Okay, we did get one person that said there is an RTTY skimmer. Look it up on YouTube. So apparently there's something floating out there. I have to check that out. So. And Neil also mentions HRD in version 6 will support the Super Browser and RTTY. At present, only PSK, so let's pass those things along. Okay, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Steve, is there anything else you want to add before we close it down?
Well, just the admonition to go out and have fun, not take it too seriously, because that's something that I mentioned during my presentation, but it's worth emphasizing, and that is just to get on there, enjoy yourself, enjoy the contest, and like I said, we have one coming up next weekend, and with any luck, perhaps I'll see one of you.
Yep, good advice, and that with any sort of operating activity, if it's a little overwhelming or so on at first, just if nothing else, listen and go ahead and make a contact or two, and eventually you get the hang of it, and before you know it, you'll be going at it full bore like the rest of us. So, okay, Steve, once again, thank you very much for taking the time to put together the presentation and to be here today and to share this with us. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I should have mentioned this on the front end, but we did have kind of a nice registration group of registrants from outside of North America, and that was one of the reasons we chose this time of the day, is to hopefully reach outside of North America and get some additional people to join us. It's a little bit difficult because we have global reach with this program. It's just when's a good time for the majority of the people. So anyways, glad everyone could be here. Once again, just remind you that this presentation has been recorded and it will be posted on www.pvrc.org, and you can also find the previous webinars listed there. At the moment, I don't have specifics on upcoming events. I'm talking to a few people on certain things, hoping to get something going on VHF, but that's still being discussed, so I don't have any dates or topics to announce at this point. But keep an eye on the contesting reflectors on the PVRC webpage, and we'll send notices out once everything's set up. So thanks once again, everyone. Thank you, Steve. I'm glad everyone could join us. Have a great rest of the weekend, and hope to see you on the air. Take care. 73s. Bye-bye.